So we're still just waiting on Jim and Tyler.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Bill.
Morning.
Oh, good morning. We're just waiting for Tyler to join. Probably give him like 4 minutes and then we can begin. Does that work? All right. Okay, well, I haven't heard back from Tyler. Are you all okay with us proceeding and starting the meeting? Okay, great. So it is January 16th and it's 9:05. And we're starting our finance committee meeting. We have trustee Cranker and trustee Harper in attendance. And we are missing trustee George. So our first item on the agenda was our sales tax. And that was in your packet. I can share my screen so it's on for everyone to see. And was there any comments on kind of finishing up this year's sales tax? Let's see if I can zoom that in a little bit for you all. Apparently it does not zoom if I press zoom on, oh, there it goes. Okay, it's just a little bit of a delay. Any comments, questions, concerns? It was still the highest sales tax collection we have seen yet.
I was just going to say, for any public who might be looking at it, this is a new chart from what we had been publishing previously, just so folks know that this includes, clarify if I'm wrong, Gloria, this includes like what we get from the county and what we get directly from the state.
Correct. So we get the 4% from the county and then we get 1% direct from the state. In previous reports, we have only reported what the county has given us. And so this is a more accurate depiction of what we're actually getting on sales tax. So I appreciate the help on creating this spreadsheet and in a way that we can combine everything and compare it.
Right. And just to clarify for anybody looking at this in the past, the 2018 number that we have there is the combined number. But if someone is looking at charts from, way back when, that would be slightly skewed because it wouldn't have the 1% from the state.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it's actually taken probably about a year to figure out how to get that stuff from the state for me and finally be able to put it all in one place. So thanks for your patience, and we're getting somewhere. Now my next goal with this is to break it down even more with kind of a look at the different industries and how they are affected, but that's further on in the future as a goal.
Yeah, I think a number that stands out to me is the real change in like the October reporting. So it's collected in December, month 12, but it's October's sales. And we have a chamber meeting tonight, and I'd be curious to chat with some of the business owners, just like, are they seeing a change in October and shoulder season? Are we seeing this coming from online sales and other stuff, or some of both? But I just think that's a pretty remarkable trend. And I'm curious to talk to some of our business owners about what they're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll stop sharing that one and move on to our next agenda item, unless you all have any more comments on that. So the next agenda item is our infrastructure reimbursement policy. So this is outlined in our code, and we did have a landowner contact us interested in this. It is on the Shrine Hill in our infrastructure reimbursement policy. This is a new system for us. We don't have a previous precedent that has been set for this. I did include in here a resolution an ordinance that was passed in 2021 regarding this infrastructure reimbursement policy. Since it is in our code and the landowner has requested to be a part of this for the town to facilitate, then we are trying to figure out the best way to do that. And so I've probably spent the last year reaching out to, and this applicant has waited patiently for a year for me to try and figure this out. Where it gets funky is we are essentially holding the funds that would be reimbursed for the installation of infrastructure. And typically these infrastructure reimbursements are done with larger developments so that it's a little unprecedented for it to happen on like one development and then the next one and the next, like single family kind of developments and single plot. So they're not guaranteed to get reimbursed is the thing, because some people aren't going to develop below them. So if they say the street goes up, 3 blocks, and only 2 of those blocks actually want to develop, then that third one they would not get reimbursed for. It is a little complicated, and when I talked with La Plata County and Durango about this, I talked with Kevin Hall, who's worked for both, and he had some issues with their last infrastructure reimbursement that they did at Three Springs, because over time there was inflation and other costs associated with tapping into that infrastructure that wasn't accounted for in their original policy. So it's really vague in our current ordinance on how to facilitate this. And that's something I've reached out to CPS, as well as, so that's our contracted planners, as well as our contracted finance, what are they called?
Our accountant?
Our accountant, thank you.
Professional manager.
I'm like finance, come on.
It's a Monday morning, Gloria. It's Tuesday, but it's Monday.
So I reached out to them, and neither one had experience in facilitating this, which makes me a little concerned to try and facilitate that ourselves. So basically what I'm asking here is if we can look for, my next stop is SGM to see if they facilitate something like this. And I was told by La Plata County that they do this. And so wanting to reach out to SGM, and then that cost associated with facilitating it would be passed back on to the developer that would be as part of the infrastructure reimbursement. So I could grab John here to explain to you kind of how it works, because he likes to draw it all out if we need more explanation there. But basically moving forward at what I'm asking, and I wanted to give you all an update on what I've been working on for the last year to try and facilitate this. But reaching out to SGM and having them come up with the spreadsheet and manage the reimbursement so that we don't find ourselves in a similar situation to Three Springs.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance here too that we might need to think about. And I know you've been thinking about it for a while, Gloria. I'm just thinking about us up here on the hillside where there are mains we can tap into. No one's extending the main necessarily. And I think it's already come up with some of these kind of not quite infill lots. I mean, like around us, I think to me, it seems a little bit more clear cut when we're talking about kind of, like you said, a developer that's doing more lots, more space, bigger infrastructure. But how do we handle it when it's like a single property owner extending the line through the alley, and then later down the road, a subsequent property owner might tap into that extension and the original property owner put it in? Like, how are we going to account for that? And then does that transfer with the sale of the property, or does it, if someone 20 years ago extended the sewer main and then sold that house, and then the lot next to it is going to tap into that sewer main, is the current person going to reimburse the original property owner or the person that they sold it to, or does any of that transfer? I saw in our code we had something that said 25 years, and then we had 10 years. And so I think it seems very nuanced and not quite clear how we manage this process.
Yeah, we're going to have to add additional language, like a policy around the ordinance that was passed on how we actually facilitate it. Luckily, the applicant that is interested in this has experience with it and is willing to help us through, but I also want to make sure that it's viable and best practice moving forward. I was discouraged from my conversations with La Plata and Durango on our ability to be able to manage it ourselves. So that's something that I wanted to bring to you all, is looking into kind of SGM or an outside management group managing this. And then if you're all okay with that cost associated with that management being passed on to the developer.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that in other communities, because this happens all over the place, we're certainly not unique. You're saying from conversations with La Plata and Durango, it sounds like they prefer to outsource it and not manage it with the municipality or the county.
Yeah, and one thing that really happened with them was they had some staff turnover, because it took about 7 years to develop out there. And so within that time, a lot of this information was lost, and then lawsuits came up. So it was kind of an eye-opening conversation for me to think about the legal implications of this as well.
Yeah, for sure, because there is such a time delay in some of these things, because the developer or the single property owner could put in the extensions or put in the infrastructure, and it could be a decade or more, who knows, before something's actually done. So
Yeah, and there's
how
no
do you go find those people?
There's no guarantee that they'll actually get reimbursed either. Because some people aren't going to develop and some people are. So yeah. But wanted just really to give you guys the heads up on something that we've been working on, and kind of pass this by if you guys had any thoughts or ideas or things that have happened in the past. Jim?
Yes.
That was, have you guys dealt with this? I know in the past at all, or do you remember anything around that 2021 ordinance?
I thought you were going to comment on Three Springs.
Oh,
Yeah, I was fully aware of the Three Springs situation. My brother was an officer out there.
okay.
His wife was general manager of Diggs Restaurant, that should still be there today, I think. And he was one of the first homeowners out there that took him an extra long time to get his house complete, because there was a ton of management issues out of that housing development.
Yeah.
This situation locally, I do recall this. I do remember how we and why we were having these discussions. What it came down to, and I know that Dana mentioned about other people and possibly tapping in. One of the issues is the lift station, that it's going to be required right there near Dana's water main, because with the addition of additional housing units requires more water and more water pressure. And that's one of the things that there's going to need to be at least 2 built into the infrastructure of there. The town taking on this and breaking it up, and Dana, that's a great question. It's a question that we had several years ago, is who's actually going to foot the bill, and how do you break this up, and how do you have it be fair for each builder, or if it's not just one big developer. And several years ago, we had a big meeting, and it was an ordinance meeting actually, and Sites broke it all down, and it sounded great, nifty in theory. It's the implementation of that is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
So I think it's still up in the air.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I mean, it seems like, Gloria, it's on your radar to implement in some fashion. Like, it seems like we need some process or tool or procedure or policy to go with what's in our code, because as we continue to have more development, this is going to come up more. And so I'm fully in support of like staff continuing to pursue which avenue is best, because it does seem like we need something, whether that's the town managing that process and those records, or it's an outside, it's our engineering firm, or it's outside, it's planning or something. It seems like we need something. It's just not super apparent to me like Jim said, how we implement that.
Yeah, and I have a lot of ideas. I just kind of wanted to let you know that this is what I'm spending my time on and pursuing right now.
Yeah.
And that it's, been a kind of a year process of researching it and figuring out what exactly this is, how to do it, and how to do it right.
Yeah.
Because maybe sometimes it's a great thing for me to have all these resources outside the community, but other times it's like, oh, they did that wrong and I don't want to do that. So how do I do it right? But
I think the two questions I would add to your list, you probably already have them, but like, how does this work with like smaller property owners? One individual property owner, or maybe they own 2 lots or whatever, extending services a bit. How does that play into it where it's very small scale? And then second, does that transfer with the sale of that property, or does it go back to the original? Like, does the kind of potential right of reimbursement stay with the property and land, or transfer with the original
okay.
Investor or original person who extended the services?
Great.
And that's on the small scale level.
Which is what I imagine we'll be using this for primarily. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping to find a good small scale example out there, but we might have to invent the wheel on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
Or
one of the reasons why we looked at it this way and taking this approach is because of the size of our community.
Mm-hmm.
Outsourcing it is real easy for larger communities because they're working on such a bigger scale, where we're not. And even if we have a developer coming in and developing X number, that's more than just 1 or 2 or 3. We still don't hit that watermark for say, hey, we need a true outsource, we need a true third party to come manage this whole thing. That was the thought several years ago. That might have changed now, but I still think that we fall into that category.
Mm-hmm.
So you're hoping the thought originally was that we keep this in-house.
That was the thought.
Okay.
Again, and that might have changed.
Yeah.
And personnel plays a big part in that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hopefully
it's just nice having this discussion to refresh everyone's memories on what transpired several moons ago.
Mm-hmm. Is there any world, we have the ordinance from 2021. Do you think historically it was just handled on a more individual, like property sale level, that the town wasn't really involved? Like, there's an empty lot, the adjoining property owner had 15 years ago extended the sewer, and when that lot's getting built and getting tapped into, somehow a discussion is happening that new property owner needs to pay. How did this play out in the past?
I think it's
Does
just
anybody know?
And I can tell you a great resource. 2 terrific resources would be Bill, who's here on the line, and Gilbert Archuleta.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I will reach out to them.
Yeah.
I've got Bill on another thing today. Bill, unless you have anything to add to this one, Bill.
I'll just say I think Jim said it best, and Dana also. We didn't really have a system per se. To give an idea, the Block 63 project, that's where the homes went just north of Silver Summit Campground. They did the whole development there and the whole expansion there right off our lines. So that's the biggest development, quote unquote, we've seen since I lived in town, that whole block.
Mm-hmm.
And that was done, that there was nothing there. So they simply had to take it off our main lines. And John worked with an engineer on that. I would say the same thing is true of the development right now on the other side of the highway up south of 5th Street. Okay. Same thing, that is tapped right off the lines there. So the amount of expansion that has gone on has been what Dana has stated, and that is a lot of individual homes and things where someone may never get reimbursed, and it simply may not happen. and having a procedure to do that would be great. But the current procedure has worked simply because we haven't come across any situations where we needed to do something different. But I do think this is very important as we've seen this the future of our town grow.
Great.
So good luck.
Excellent. Well, I wanted you all to be aware of this too when I bring something to the board so that you can say, yes, we've reviewed this. We've had a discussion about this. We understand why we're doing this. So. All right. Next on our agenda is refuse fund EQR rate. So I'm going to turn this over to Bill and Melina.
All right. So as I put in the memo, and I've asked Bill to join us this morning because he's a little better versed in the actual calculations that he and Kelly came up with when they started this project. All of our businesses in town should be set on a base rate of $64.95 for a transfer station on the bi-monthly billing cycle. And then this EQR project that Bill and Kelly started back in 2020 proposed this calculation system to account for the amount of trash that restaurants, hotels, commercial and other commercial businesses create, mostly during the summer months. During the winter months, I think that if they're out of operation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but the purpose would be to go back down to that base rate during the winter if they're not operating. But during the summer, when they are operating, using this calculation system based on various different things, the commercial spaces in general are based on a square footage calculation. Restaurants are based on number of seats in the establishment, and hotels and motels are based on the kinds of rooms that are in the business, that would help kind of bring our refuse fund back into balance. I ended up not scanning in any of the EQR pieces of the binder just so that we wouldn't be publishing people's information in a public packet. But I do have it if anybody would like to come flip through it, that shows the rates that we would want to charge businesses during their months of operation. And if we do this, it would really significantly increase our bi-monthly revenue during the summer months for trash. Yeah, do you have anything to add, Bill? You're on mute, Bill.
Sorry.
You're good.
I would simply say the system is kind of a in-house system. I'll answer any questions, or I can state that in researching over the years, other towns in our area, as well as working with Chris at Bruin Waste, there is no quote system. There is no pattern. Everybody has their own method of doing it. And so Kelly's and mine decision 3 or 4 years ago was, and this was pushed initially by Tiffany Decay, and as you guys are well aware, our refuge fund has been out of balance for mega years. And she asked if I would do this because I worked up there in the early 2000s, and so that's why it was tasked to me to do. And I just tried to come up with a system that was the simplest change to what we had, rather than reinventing the system, because that's what other communities have done. They simply increase their rates, similar to what we would do with our water rates. For example, you guys aren't going to change how we do it. You're simply going to add to the cost per gallon or whatever the case may be. So I simply looked at that system and tried to come up with a way of utilizing the EQR system that we have in place and utilizing percentages of that. Now, answer any questions you have, because I think it might be easier to respond to what you want to know.
Jim, we're talking about trash again.
Love it.
Yes, we are, Dana.
We've circled on this a lot. I think
this
Bill,
is
go
this is
ahead.
my first big project of the year, was getting these numbers together for you. To show you that I do, I mean, our refuse fund really is not in a healthy place. And I do think that if we did this, it would significantly help our refuse fund and it wouldn't affect the residential rate at all.
Yeah. A couple of thoughts and questions. So for anybody that may decide to tune in later because they want to talk about trash and EQR, I think it's important to kind of put this in context. So a couple agenda items earlier, we looked at our sales tax numbers, right? And really see kind of the health of our finances in that regard. So I think for some citizens, there might be the question of like, well, why do you need to raise rates when sales tax is great and town funding is XYZ? And I think it's just important to kind of communicate to the public and help everybody understand that really when we have these enterprise funds like refuse or water and sewer, they really need to be funded by kind of the services provided. So it's not really good for us to be transferring money from our general fund into these enterprise funds. So just as kind of a public policy education piece, if anybody ever does listen to this, that's kind of one of the reasons why we need to make these funds quote unquote sustainable, and they need to be sustainable in terms of the rates we charge to get this service. So that's kind of the first baseline piece I think that's important to clarify for folks. I think I really appreciate, Bill, the work that you and Kelly have done, and Melina now taking this over, and Matt's I mean, everybody's touched this project really. I think in general, this makes sense. I'd be curious to hear some of Jim's thoughts as a business owner, because I know we've all talked round and round about the dumpsters and the cost of transferring our refuse out of the town. I do think I've heard a bit personally from some business owners that say it's not a total fair assumption to say that businesses or our commercial customers produce more refuse than a home. So for example, my home of 5 people might actually produce more trash than the hardware store, right? Or something like that. And so I think just acknowledging that for some of our business owners, I'd be curious, Bill, if you and Kelly had any feedback on that, just how if we should make that more nuanced or just acknowledge that, because that definitely was some public feedback that I got. I don't know if Jim heard that as well from some of our business owners that, well, actually, it's not a completely fair assumption to say all business owners produce more than all residences. And so that's just a point in the memo that I know we might get some reactions to, or I might hear about. So that's the first piece. I think the second piece would be as we implement this, just being really good on our communication, because I think there has been a lot of confusion with the public, with both residents or businesses, and especially for businesses that have dumpsters. Again, I've heard a common feedback of like, well, we already pay Bruin, we pay for our dumpsters, we pay for this. And so I think folks might just feel like they're getting charged on top of it. I think if we have a good info sheet on kind of why that is, both to have our refuse fund be sustainable and also because our understanding is that the cost for the dumpster is not covering our cost for actually transferring the waste out of town. And that's what we're really trying to get at, is how we fund the transfer of the waste out of town. So I'll stop talking. Those are some pieces. Bill or Jim might have other feedback and input.
Bill can go first.
Okay. Well, 2 things. One thing, I think you need to be clear on that the change in rates are going to be for a very small percentage, no residential change whatsoever. Number one,
right?
And number two, in the business community, and let's just use an arbitrary number of 175 business licenses or 150, the change on 80% of those is zero. So, for example, there's no change at the hardware store or for the any non-restaurant or non-motel, hotel, or non-RV park. What we discovered in reviewing is the fees paid by, not all, but some of the restaurants, the fees paid by the RV parks were below zero, if you can imagine what I'm saying.
Yes.
So the difference here isn't, what we're not representing an increase. The whole plan here, once we got into this, was to determine it to be fair and even.
Yeah.
And that's what was not happening. So if you're getting information, Dana, from people that say it's going to raise, that's just not an accurate. Yes, and we need to make that, the board and the staff needs to make that clear. But 95% of the folks getting trash bills today will not be affected. The people that are going to be affected are the ones that weren't paying anything in the past. And without going into any specific businesses, there were a couple of very, very large businesses in town that literally were paying one EQR for trash that they were accumulating an equivalent to a year of residence they would accumulate in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So a lot of it had to do with balancing it. It isn't so much raising the rates, it was making it fair across the board. And that was
clarification, Bill?
I'm sorry.
Can I add one thing to you, Bill?
I'm not understanding.
Can I add something?
Just go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
A lot of the regular commercial buildings, like the hardware store, the only thing that they would need to take care of is just the base rate. A lot of the square footage bases are just the base rate of $64. And
Great.
some of them are on that rate already, but some of them aren't.
Right.
So
Right.
it's just a lot of the square footage ones are just that base rate. It's the ones that are really paying more are hotels, restaurants, and the RV parks and campgrounds, or should be paying more.
Thanks for that. That's great for
Yeah.
communicating.
Yeah. So the truth is there's not a huge increase going on. There's a balance of fees that were not being paid being brought up there. And so what Kelly and I did, and you can go into the details are simple. We went to all the rest businesses. I did a lot of them just based on my knowledge of the business. But a lot of them we had to go and say, how many motel or hotel rooms do you have if we didn't know? How many RV spots did you have and things like that. And once we determined that, then I'm going to be real honest with you. I came up with my best historic knowledge of both the lodging business and the RV that I'm sitting in. How much trash do we generate? And tried to come up with a formula that seemed fair, and that's what we did. And is it fair? I think I can state how I came up with it, but I mean, everybody's going to have a different opinion. Like everybody has a different eyelash, and yet they are reasonable. And how come I use tables and chairs in restaurants? Is if you flip to my other part-time job, which is fire inspector, that's how we determine fire codes, the size of chairs in a restaurant. So I use that for garbage because it made sense to kind of stay with something that was sort of, so to speak, in our game plan. It was simply, this has been developed to pass the cost of garbage. To get to your second point, and this is a tough one, and you're right. How do you tell somebody that what they're paying for with broom waste, whether it's a trash can in front of their house or a dumpster behind their business, you're paying for the fee to have Bruin take that can, empty it, take the stuff that's inside out of it, and haul it for you, instead of what a lot of us do, and that's just simply go to the dump from our home once or twice a week or wherever it's needed. And so that's a concept, and that is something that's hard to communicate. They're paying Bruin the cost of bringing it to this transfer station, but they're not paying for the cost of the transportation, and that's what we tried to build into this formulas. And I think Melina said it best. If we were to institute these as early as you guys approved to do that, I think we won't break even in 2024, but I think you'll see that number will drop drastically. And if it was for the whole year in 25, we won't know for sure, and it may need some further adjustments, but it's going to get the number down to, low 10, 20, $30,000 range instead of this almost $100,000 range, which is a lot, pretty much intangible to continue. I hope I made some sense. It's not an easy. I mean, we spent a lot of time doing this, and and it was boots on the ground kind of work, literally walking from business to business or driving, whatever the case may be, and determining things. But our data is good, so
Yeah.
It isn't the data that's bad; it's the formula that we kind of quasi-invented based on common sense.
Yeah,
And
I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's great to see this work coming to fruition. I know Jim can attest to this. We've had multiple conversations about it, kind of unraveling this ball of yarn to get to the bottom of what's actually happening, what's actually getting billed, what we're getting charged, what businesses are getting charged, etc. So it's good to circle back to this, but I don't know if Jim had other thoughts.
It was,
I'd like to see the board move forward with instigating it and see how it works from a cash flow point of view. That's
I
my
agree.
recommendation as a retired staff guy.
Thank you, Bill.
Jim, did you have something?
Always.
Okay.
This stemmed from really just cleaning up the reporting. That's what it came back down to. There were businesses that were upset. Of course, everyone's going to be upset when they're paying zero, and then they have to start paying into the system. But the reality is, what we've tried to do, like increasing the bed tax, is trying to take that burden off of our locals and pushing that over to the businesses and the tourism sector. And I think we've done a really good job of that and making it equal and equitable and fair for everyone in town. The biggest thing, and we used the GI as an example, was again coming back to the reporting. Some businesses were paying these updated numbers, and then other businesses weren't. So really just getting everyone up on the same even level playing field always, creates a little issue. Change is difficult, but I think we got there, and we are. And Bill, I agree with you. We are going to get that much closer. We probably won't break even the first 2 years, but I think you're right. Within the next couple of years, I think we'll get really, really close, and we won't have to dip into the fund as frequent as we do now.
So our proposal is to bring a resolution to the next meeting, implementing these EQR rates. So that can be adopted by the board. Bill?
Can I interject something, since you guys are talking about the transfer station and costs in general? Besides just this particular item, I think it would be prudent to look at the open top dumpster fees and the mirror tags that Kelly and I developed that didn't seem to pan out, but there's money being lost right there that is also probably in the 5-figure range annually. I would have to guess between 10 and 20, right in that particular category also. I don't know how you address that. Gloria and I have talked about that extensively over the last year and a half. So this will take care of part of the piece that Dana and you and Jim are aware of, and information to help dissipate the cost, or dissipate the knowledge. Pardon me, that's not the right word. To get the knowledge out there about what they're paying for is important. But what we have going on at the dump right now, or at the transfer station right now, is not quite a free for all, but more than it could be. And I don't know how you want to address that, but that's something to keep in mind also.
Bill, are you just referring to kind of how we keep track at the transfer station of kind of who is sort of quote unquote allowed to dump or not allowed to dump based on their residency or that kind of stuff? Kind of the tags that you and Kelly had implemented a while back. Is that what you're referring to?
That's part of it. That's part of it. Yes, that is part of it. Part of it is that, and part of it is even if you came up to with a tag and a full trailer full of stuff, whether it's, you guys clean up something in your house or us or whatever the case may be, that's not getting appropriately charged for anything over, say, a quarter of a yard. And then there's, I go up there on a Saturday and there's a full trailer of stuff being unloaded, and the dump attendant may not be there, or the backup attendant guy isn't really aware of what's going on. So that whole system itself is problematic, would be a polite way of saying it.
Right.
And that's something Bill and I have talked about a lot, of if a part-time attendant, maybe just in the summer, or like someone employed by the town, would be able to do a cost recovery on basically pay for their own position by being able to monitor those things. Maybe working with Bruin on making sure that they monitor those, but that would be in our contract, which we have already signed a 10-year contract with. So I'm really trying to figure out how to capture those costs. We've also talked to Bruin about kind of the dumping that happens in the summer with our summer guests. And, we added an extra dumpster out at the whistle stop because they were getting overloaded out there. So we do split costs with the whistle stop out there for that extra dumpster, to discourage people from throwing their trash just anywhere. There's options for like a pay dumpster so that they would like pay with their credit card or on an app for the dumpster to open. Those are definitely more expensive, but something that's an option out there for being able to kind of recover some of those costs. Does any of that interest you? or I mean, I think we're still going to pursue it. The EQR is definitely our first, like, let's clean up our current data and then let's look at how we can kind of refine our system moving forward.
Yeah, I think the real improvements and changes and sustainability comes from the EQR approach. I do think it goes back to Jim's point about the bed tax, et cetera, is how do we help the folks that use our systems and our infrastructure share some of that cost so the burden doesn't solely fall on our year-round or summer, our residents. So yeah, I think any ideas we have in that regard is great. I think I'd worry with like a credit card dumpster. Are we just going to see people just dropping their trash right next to it? That's just kind of what I would worry would happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that comes with its own host of problems of being able to identify people that were dropping stuff off, having a camera, all of that. So
yeah.
If I may talk about past history, instigating a trash fee was going to, quote, create garbage all over the county. And as we all know from traveling around the county, whether you're walking or four-wheeling or whatever, there's little hidden trash piles that you run across every so often. They've been cleaned up, a lot of them, but there's still quite a few that exist. And so however we do this fee schedule or the implication of a fee or a dump attendant, you also have to keep in mind that possibility. So there's a real fine line and a real fine balance on how to make this all work.
And we're dedicated to still trying to figure it out.
Thanks for thinking about trash so much.
All right. So are you all comfortable with us bringing a resolution to the next meeting regarding this? It might not be on this meeting. It might be the next meeting regarding the EQR rates.
Yeah, just depending on time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. We do have quite a bit going on in the clerk's office right now. It is tax season and getting all of that out, as well as starting on our audit. We're hoping to update our fee schedule. So we are just
Stacked.
stacked, but getting stuff done.
Feel free to prioritize as appropriate.
Thank you.
Is my opinion.
Thank you. All right. Anything else on refuse? Bill, thank you so much for joining us on your vacation.
You're welcome. Thanks. Glad you guys are staying warm up there. It's actually where I'm located is in the bottom of the Arctic freeze, so it's not particularly toasty where we're at either. In fact, it was 30 last night. So
I know Sophia was looking forward to that. Oh well.
yeah, but temporary, I assure you.
I won't apologize.
See you next
Yeah,
time.
I know. I'm like, Jen's in a t-shirt with the fan running and a window open and just
I have moved my tropical plants. We had to bring them in last night. So anyway, it is what it is. See you guys all as necessary. And to my fellow staff members, you know how to reach me if you need me.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
Thank you guys.
Drive safe.
All right. And so our next one is Colorado Trust. This is a kind of an organizational thing, and it's been kind of a learning moment for myself. Is when we went over to the new accountant, we really started to look at all our finances and say, okay, how can we best manage this? You know, how can we do better on managing our finances? And originally we had like 7 accounts, which we consolidated down to about 3, which was great. And now I'm realizing we do want a Colo Trust account that we can use to kind of store some of the funds that we get, you know, extra in the summer that we utilize in the winter, and get interest off of those. So I put together a agenda memo for you all. Yes, we did just close this account down in 2022, but I'm asking to reopen an account because I see the value now of Colo Trust and how we can manage these finances a little better to create revenue, really. And that's really what I approach you guys a lot about, is how we can create that revenue and create sustainable funds. So my proposal is to open another Colo Trust account. The great thing about the account that I'm proposing is that we can do multiple transactions within a month and not get penalized with the interest. So that's something that I'm looking at, and it requires a little bit more hands-on as far as being vigilant of how much money we need every month and transfer that money over. But it is all doable for us to I think make at least $15,000 in excess, like from the interest. So just wanted to pass this all by you, thoughts and concerns, and bring this to the next meeting with a resolution to reopen a Colo Trust account.
Good idea.
I think my main question just was, you know, thinking about being on the finance committee, being conscientious about how we use our public funds. This all makes sense. And also, do you feel comfortable with the risk portfolios? Like, I mean, there's always some risk that we take on in the interest of being in interest-bearing accounts as well. So you feel pretty good with the risk portfolio and the ways in which these funds would be invested.
Yeah, and one thing I
appreciate
appreciate after learning more about Colo Trust is that they're just for municipalities and governments. So the risk is very low for us. And they're used to working with our type of organizations. So as far as any kind of statutory requirements, they meet them all right now. So this would be much, I don't want to say a lot more beneficial than kind of opening up a savings account at Bank of the San Juans. But it's a little bit better than the interest we would get on that. And then the ability to be able to transfer those funds without getting penalized is huge as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, to me, looking at it, you know, it's not like an FDIC insured bank. So like if like maybe a savings account would be at a different bank. But I think this made a lot of sense considering the option for earning the interest.
Yeah, so this is kind of me going back and being like, actually, we do want that account open. But it was good to consolidate everything for a minute.
Yep. And closing the account originally was just to try to get a handle on everything. It wasn't that we didn't want it and that we didn't need it. It was trying to get a handle on everything. So
yeah,
that's a good thing. We need it.
So learning as I go, but I think that we can do better. And this is one of my goals, is to create those kind of interest accounts that we can capitalize off of.
setting up organizational infrastructure. Way to go.
Yeah, I had this idea that I would be fully organized by now, but it's taken me longer than I thought.
Maybe we had more disorganization than we thought.
Yeah, but it's good because I'm learning and we're getting better and more efficient here. So. All right. Anything else that you all have to bring up? I think we've hit the end of our agenda.
I don't. I'm coming home tomorrow. That's exciting.
Oh, yay! Welcome home. I think
That's why I'm soaking.
No.
That's why I'm soaking in all the sun right now.
You
No.
should.
I'm expecting you to arrive in like a Hawaiian print shirt, just bringing it with us.
You missed
Yeah.
it last night.
Oh,
We were at a scrimmage and I was flip flops and everything.
oh man.
Nice.
Well,
Well, it's a beautiful, sunny, snowy day here. It's just gorgeous.
I'm ready to come home. I'm ready to come home.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, team. Well, thank you so much for your time. Tyler did text. Unfortunately, he had to get called to work, so he wasn't able to join us today, but we'll watch this meeting later.
Thanks,
guys.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.